Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown, the unofficial sumo podcast for official sumo fans.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. My name's Ryan.
This is Jake.
This is Mac.
This is Flairk.
And this is a bonus episode that I know basically nothing about, so I'm going to hand it over to Jake.
I've kept this secret from everyone. That's my grandmaster plan. No, this is an episode on the very first Yokozuna, like plural Yokozuna. I guess I could have picked a better title.
Yokozuna.
There was one
Yokozuna?
before Hakuho?
I mean, no real ones. But anyways, this in my grand vision of this, I was kind of following in the sandal steps of the 9th or the 12th, I guess, depending on how you count, Yokozuna named Jinmaku.
Is it 9 or 12?
That's the thing.
Okay.
We're going to get into that.
All right.
So Jinmaku was a Yokozuna in the mid 1800s. In 1867 was when he was promoted, and at the time, he was the 9th person given the license to do the Yokozuna entrance ceremony. At the time, however, if you look him up now, they'll say the 12th because of his work. He was a great wrestler in his own. He wrestled for 20-ish years, and in the final year of his career, 1867, he was promoted. He was given this license to do the Yokozuna Doyo Iri. This is long before Yokozuna was considered its own rank. Yokozuna is the word itself means the horizontal rope that they tie around themselves.
Did they do a dohyo iri during bouts before this?
Before this, only as a group, and they still do that group. Everybody except for the Yokozuna. Have you seen those where they circle the ring? Yeah. So that the Makuuchi division does that at the beginning of the day, and the Yokozuna, they do theirs separately. Each one has their own dance that they do on their way in.
Okay, so like I guess what happens is like before the actual Yokozunas did this, it was one person that got a license to do it each day before.
No, essentially up until the beginning of this story here, Ozeki was the top rank, and that was it.
Oh.
Ozeki was just the top rank, and we'll get into this story as Jinmaku studies this, and he tracks down all the people who were given a license to wear the rope. It wasn't an actual title yet. It gets there eventually to where it is now, but at the time it was just an Ozeki who was given the right to do their own entrance.
So then the previous 9, if he's 9 or 12, depending on which one we're talking about, were all Ozeki then in that case?
Yes, they would be listed on the Bansuke as an Ozeki.
Okay.
So this guy, he goes through his career, and he's very accomplished. He was a legendary wrestler. He never lost as an Ozeki. And he gets to his final year, and by the way, this is in the era of 2 tournaments a year.
And
so
it used to be like 1 week, right? It wasn't always 2 weeks, was it?
if you go back and look at records, it's not always consistent.
Okay.
They change it year to year. It's generally around 10 bouts or so. In this era is around 10 bouts, and there were a lot more kyujo. There were a lot of draws. There were a lot of what they would call a hold, where they can't decide who won. There's a lot of different results that you can get when you don't have instant replay, when you just don't have the technology to be absolutely certain. And they didn't used to do
Tori Naoshi?
rematches.
I think it's Tori Naoshi.
I mean, if it was too close to call, they would just say they'd call it a hold. Whoever the Gumbai was pointed at, whoever the referee pointed his fan at, I don't know. We'll hold it there. We'll hold that result.
Okay, here.
So he didn't have as many matches as a Yokozuna, so it's not super in that sense. It's not super impressive that he didn't ever lose as an Ozeki or a Yokozuna, but it's still pretty cool because he's the only one to attain that rank and never lose at it.
Yeah, he was still a top dog in the day, it sounds like.
For sure. In 1867 here, here's where it gets a little bit screwy. He's given a Yokozuna license. So he's an Ozeki, of course, he's got the top rank, but he's been acknowledged as a legendary wrestler that should be given the rank to do his own entrance. So he's given this license by the Gojo clan. And the Gojo clan were kind of a rival to like the big clan that was kind of acted as the old sumo association, and that's the House of Yoshida. They were an extremely influential house. They eventually relented and gave him a license midway through 1867. So a little bit after the Gojo license. So it's kind of screwy to know exactly when he became a Yokozuna. But regardless, after he was given that license by the Yoshida clan, that was his last tournament. 1867 is a very, very important year in Japanese history. It's when the wars to kick off the Meiji Restoration period began. Jinmaku actually, he sent a letter. This is a direct quote. I'll just read this. This is a quote from Wikipedia that is agonizing in what it implies because it doesn't tell you the details that I really want to know here. So it says, on December 25th, 1867, he, Jinmaku, saw the beginnings of national strife and sent a letter to Saigo Takamori. He escaped from Edo and moved to Kyoto. The Boshin War, began in January 1868, and he protected his master Shimazu Tadayoshi from harm.
How?
Exactly. Is he like on a bridge, like using thrusts to push guys off of it, or
all that I can imagine?
or some sort of badass legendary video game stuff, or what?
He used his brand of sumo.
He
was very successful.
He used his brand
If his
of sumo.
attackers didn't have a belt, was he powerless?
He must have been a pusher thruster. Pusher thruster.
He was just really intimidating.
But yeah, so some background here. It's not super important to our story, but this is a very important time in Japanese history. Essentially, what the Edo period, the early 1800s. This is where a massive amount of Japanese fiction is based. It's where there's wandering samurai and things like that. But that period comes to an end when the shogun, essentially the warlord, who's in charge of the country, he kind of in name is a subordinate to the emperor, but he's got the real power. This Meiji Restoration, Meiji is the emperor at this time. There's basically a civil war that puts the emperor back in charge. At this time, Japan was becoming open to Western countries for the first time, and that caused a lot of strife internally. A lot of people didn't like it. Eventually, it got to the point of war, and when Emperor Meiji is back in charge, he kind of like this restoration period kind of reinvigorates the Japanese culture. We want to stick to our traditions. We want to, enact laws, and our policies should keep the Japanese culture strong. We don't want it to disappear because of outside influences. So one of the things that happened there was it meant that sumo grew in popularity.
Okay.
It was something that was seen as very Japanese. It is one of the most quintessentially Japanese things out there. Jinmaku, his ties to Shimazu, his master, and this other guy, Saigo Takamori, both of those guys are from a region called Satsuma. And Satsuma, 10 years after the Meiji Restoration, they were on the side of the emperor, but then when it kind of became clear over the next decade or so that the samurai weren't going to be able to be in their influential position, the samurai were kind of the losers of this restoration period. So Satsuma was actually in open rebellion. This is kind of what this is. Like I said, it's a very influential time in Japanese history. Eventually, Tom Cruise goes over there and saves everybody. That's what that movie's like. This period is what that movie is about. But it's a tremendous time of upheaval, and it seems like Jinmaku had some serious ties to the rebellious region.
Very cool.
But the problem is, I can't find many details on what he actually did with them, other than he protected his master from harm, obviously using sumo to, against armed men.
I'm just envisioning him going against horses. Just completely just throwing them off the sides of bridges out of the ring.
By
with some
their belts.
Gyoji just standing in the middle going, yep, you win. You win.
Yes, Jinmaku. So yeah, history lesson aside, sumo grew in popularity during this era. And it kind of culminated in a moment which I like to think is important to Jinmaku personally, but I haven't found anything that ties this together. But the timeline kind of implies that this was a turning point for him personally. In 1890, for the first time, more than 2 ozeki had to be listed on the Bansuke at the same time.
Just because they had earned that rank.
They'd earned the rank, and the guys that were already ozeki, they did enough to stay ozeki.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, there's 4.
You might not know this, but I'm curious. Did they have like the same rules for ozeki where you could have one makikoshi and then
I don't know for certain.
Okay.
Yeah, the rules were crazy. Like if you just have like, I heard like if you just look really strong, like you look like an ozeki, or if you just have like one really good tournament, you become an ozeki.
A lot of that was actually before this period. By this period, it's starting to get a little bit more categorized.
Okay.
All right.
Regardless, though, there's 4 of them, and they don't have space for it because there's just 2 Ozeki slots on the Banzuke up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is, instead of having it be a rectangle shape, it's kind of like a T-shirt shape. There's like 2 little wings on the side. Yeah, I know, it's kind of silly, but they list the extra 2 Ozeki on the sides here. However, one of the guys, because of his performance relative to the other Ozeki, because he had the lowest previous record out of those 4, he was going to be listed on the T-shirt sleeve. And this guy, Nishino Umi is his name, he's like, wait a second, I've been given a license to wear this Yokozuna rope. I should be recognized for that. I don't want to be on no T-shirt wings. So for the first time, they listed him as a Yokozuna. That's the first time that Yokozuna as a title appears on the Banzuke.
Did they move him up to the collar? Was he like on the collar rim now on the T-shirt?
I guess I can't say for certain exactly where on the T-shirt that put him.
Okay.
But because they started doing that, now they have to do it forever.
So
of course,
Nishinoumi was like kind of the first official Yokozuna on the Banzuke.
Or was he like the 20th?
But he was the first.
Exactly.
But he was the first listed as Yokozuna on the Banzuke.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, because of the way the timelines line up here, I like to think that's what triggered Jinmaku. Because he spent 9 years on the road, like taking donations, doing research, all to do this like massive personal legacy. And this is the Yokozuna Stone, if you've heard of that. It's this I've heard a range of like 3 to 3.5 meters tall. So it's like a 10-foot tall stone. Mm-hmm. It's granite, weighs 20 frickin' tons.
Oh, wow.
And it's in the Tomioka Hachiman Shrine in Tokyo. I'm probably butchered that one.
Yeah.
But in 1900, he creates this stone. And this is his legacy. This is the last major thing I can find on any timeline of his life.
Okay. Once again, probably don't know this, but you saying he created the stone just got me thinking, how?
Oh, he carried it on his back around Japan.
Right, he's a Yokozuna. I forgot about that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And quit saying I probably won't know this. I've done a lot of research here.
Well,
no, I probably
prepping
won't
us
know.
for this episode, you're like, don't ask me a lot of details because there's not a lot of information available.
Yeah, and here is exactly where that comes into play.
Okay.
Because I'm going to go through the first 6 names that he puts on that stone.
Okay.
And those first 6 are absolute legends, each one of them in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to cover these because they're basically the earliest sumo wrestlers that we have any record of.
Okay.
The very first name, or actually the first 3 names he puts on there, were never ever given a Yokozuna license in life. This was before they even started doing that. The Yoshida family that I mentioned earlier are the guys that gave out these licenses. They kind of acted like the Sumo Association for the very, very early period. And they didn't ever give these licenses out until 2 of the guys that I'll get to later. But the first 3 never got this in life. They were just retroactively decided by Jinmaku himself that these guys are so legendary they've got to be on my rock.
Okay.
These are the guys.
So is the what's it called? Is it just the Yokozuna stone?
Yeah, the Yokozuna stone, the Yokozuna monument.
Is that kind of what they go by? Is that canon, basically?
Essentially.
Okay.
So when you look up Jinmaku, he's listed as the 12th. Like I said,
Okay.
Oh,
he
that's
was
where
only the
12
9th
comes in.
guy to get the license because
He
the
gave
3
it.
guys before him, they didn't do that yet.
Gotcha.
But when he goes back to research and he tracks down, all through these records, all through these oral histories throughout Japan, he decides that these 3 guys should count.
Okay.
So these are the first 3 Yokozuna, and the first one may not have even existed. We don't know. He could be just this massive collaboration of different sumo legends. I'm going to go way out on a limb here and say it's probably exaggerated a little bit because he's rumored to be 410 pounds and 8'6". This is Akashi.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The son of a local samurai in central Japan here. Akashi is widely considered the most legendary and the first star of sumo.
Okay.
Because of him, the sumo organizers were able to charge admission for the very first time. Before this, it was just a ritual thing. But in the early 1600s, they were finally able to say, okay, well, this guy's awesome enough. His legend is widespread enough that, you got to pay to see him. So there's all sorts of crazy legends about this guy. It's awesome. Like here's a quote that I found. In sumo folklore, Akashi, his given name here. Shigenosuke. Yeah, we're going to go with that. We're going to just say Akashi. Akashi faced the 2.27 meter giant Neo Nidayu in Kyoto. While he was hoisted high above Nidayu, Akashi somersaulted in the air and kicked him down to win the match.
Pretty sure you can't kick.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Kicking? That's not allowed.
The quote isn't even over. Hold on a second.
All right.
Another historical document says Akashi lived around 1750 and that he was once defeated by a 65-year-old former Rikishi. So because of the dates, because of like the kind of wide disparity in talent between all these stories out there, it's pretty much confirmed that if there were either multiple guys who went by Akashi or it's just like a collection of stories. Mm-hmm. We don't know. But there's, if you search for him, AKASHI, if you search for him, his Wikipedia picture is this famous artwork of him, and he's just like choking a guy and holding him down.
The Ichinojo.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, Yoshikaze.
But no, it's this really cool ancient, wood block art.
Cool.
But yeah, so there's all these overlapping tales. Obviously, we're never going to know exactly the facts of this guy.
Yeah.
But it's widely regarded. His name has been in legend so long. He's regarded as the first guy to be a Yokozuna.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So these first three guys, by the way, all three of them are before the Bansuke was ever even written. That wasn't until 1761 that they even started doing that.
Oh, wow.
So we have no idea what his records were, his individual matches.
So was there just like one like shrine that was doing like the most prestigious sumo in Japan? Because I remember hearing that sumo is kind of done all across the country at different shrines. Was there like one place everyone gathered to do sumo?
It changed over time. There's been many different places that have been the focus, and at this time, I'm not positive which one it would have been, if it would have even been regular. Okay. But this is all in like Edo, in the main capital, is where most of the official sumo took place in the very early days. Mm-hmm. The next guy on here is probably the guy that I know the least about. This is Ayagawa. He was the dates on this are kind of weird too, because supposedly he lived from 1703 to 1765, but he was an ozeki in 1717. At 14 years old.
They started him young, apparently.
So either they started him young or the dates are a little messed up or whatever, but we don't know because...
Or he didn't exist at all.
That's possible for, I suppose, a lot of people. But we don't know any of his matches.
Okay, so they have him officially as an ozeki. Did Akashi, did he ever have like an official ranking?
I think he's too far in the past to really know anything for sure.
So maybe this guy might be a little bit more legit, since it seems like he was officially an ozeki.
That could be. I mean, he wasn't 8.5 feet tall, though. So
that's legendary status on its own.
But no, he was also from central Japan. He's rumored to be like 6'7", so we're starting to get a little bit more into the somewhat realistic levels here.
Yeah.
He was actually a pupil of this famous Yoshida family. But again, he was never given the Yokozuna license in life, and he was before the Bansuke, so we don't know his individual matches. We don't know the dates that he was at, any rank or anything like that. But another guy that Jinmaku decided was legendary enough that we got to put him on this.
Okay.
The third guy is Maruyama. Maruyama was slightly later in the 1700s. He actually died while he was active in 1737. So we're starting to nail down dates a little bit better here. He actually wrestled in Edo and in Osaka, and the coolest thing about him that I could find, he wore a rope around his waist and he dared people to touch it. So now we're getting to like, okay,
maybe that's where the rope came from.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Come on. You want to try it? Come on.
Yeah, and you probably wouldn't want to because he's also rumored to be about 6.5 feet tall, pushing 350, 400 pounds.
I'd like to have him on my bridge protecting me from harm.
Yes, if I had to pick somebody to protect me on a bridge with their brand of sumo.
The bridge was just us assuming he was on a bridge, right?
We've said it enough times, I think it has become legend now.
Okay.
We're going to accept that as GSB canon here.
Yes, it was a bridge.
In our podcast canon.
We're gonna put it on a rock. So
Yes.
with a Gyoji standing right in the
Legendary
center,
bridge
just watching the
defenders.
match, just
Yes.
ready.
On the GSB memorial rock that we put in the shrine of, Midwestern United States.
in some guy's backyard.
In some guy's backyard.
In the middle of a cornfield.
Yeah.
How'd this get here?
Come to Midwest United States, find the GSB Memorial Rock in somebody's cornfield.
Yes.
If you find it, you win a prize. I don't know. You can be in our fantasy series.
You could probably move it because I don't know if rock's big enough that you can't move around these parts. Anyways, the other legendary fun fact about Maruyama is that he was supposed to have only lost twice ever, which would be pretty frickin' sweet.
Looks like he was in the same
pretty
time
good.
period as Ayagawa, so maybe
Pretty
it was
close.
against him.
Yeah, and you said like he died while active, so he never kind of hit his slump where he lost and stopped going in tournaments.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
He was, again, this guy's before the Bansuke, so we don't know individual matches. But he was 36. So physically he would have been on the decline,
Fairly young.
but not like, not like way too old to do anything.
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of
Right,
old.
yeah.
Aminoshiki is still going around, so
Yeah. Anyways, after that, we get into, we get past the Stone Age, and now we're in recorded history.
Well, still in the Stone Age.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Yes, the Yokozuna Stone. So now I'm going to give you a little bit more info on this Yoshida clan because they become a little bit more important here. So the Yoshida clan, they acted kind of like the Sumo Council. They were also the Gyoji for a long time. They kind of inherited that role and just clung to it like nothing else. They were the guys who officially in 1744 they got sumo recognized by the shogun. They had just a complete monopoly over all the wrestlers. They organized everything. They were the guys in charge of all of this. So in 1789, they were the ones who gave out the first ever set of Yokozuna licenses for guys to do their own entrance. They gave it to two guys at the same time, and it's not really confirmed for sure, but essentially the understanding is that they did this to make the sport seem more respectable, make it more relatable, make it more of an attraction that they could use. Because 2 years later in 1791, they did a nice huge performance in the Shogun's castle. So this was kind of like they're part of what helped legitimize sumo as a sport, as a normal thing that was going to be traveling around doing professional shows, things like that. And the Yoshida family, by organizing this performance for the Shogun, they locked themselves in as the big family to contend with. So they gave out these two licenses to the top two guys at the time. These guys are Tanikaze and Onogawa. They were both given this license in 1789. They had a great rivalry. Tanikaze was quite a bit older and a bit more successful, but they were rivals throughout their life. They both won matches against each other. Tanikaze, he actually won 21 unofficial titles. I'll get to why that's unofficial later, but they didn't really count Yusho as an award yet. So, but we'll get there. But he, in 21 tournaments, he had the best record by at least one.
Okay.
So, he had more wins than second place, essentially. He's in a much more realistic, like I said, recorded history, much more realistic size of 6'2", 370. At the time, of course, would be absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
But it's at least where humans can grow.
It's more recently that sumo wrestlers have started packing on the pounds. They weren't necessarily historically always these gigantic, large men that we currently think of.
They were always big for their time. But yeah, 370 would be pretty big now. But
Yeah.
Onogawa, this other guy, was actually quite a bit smaller. He was 250 and only 5'9". And he's not even the shortest Yokozuna. There have been Yokozuna as short as 5'6", which gives me some hope.
Keep practicing.
I can still amount to something.
Get better leverage when you're down there.
Anyways, Tanikaze, he like you were saying earlier, he debuted as an Ozeki because he was like, oh, that guy's gigantic. Let's grab him from the crowd and have him wrestle a little bit. But he did turn out to be an absolute phenom. He stayed around. He did this. He did it forever. He also died active at 44, so he was still active for quite a while.
Jeez.
Dang.
And he was still kicking ass all the way till the end of that.
There's hope for Ami Nishiki.
Who's the guy we talked about in our review episode that's been kicking it around Sandanme and Joni Don since the 80s?
I forgot his name, but yeah, he's in his late 40s or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, though.
Hanakaze.
Hanakaze? Yeah.
Very close to Tanakaze. Could it be a connection?
No. Okay. Tanakaze was actually a big part of Isano Umi's stable. This is a name that's still around, actually. Ikioi and Nishikigi are in this stable.
Very cool.
That it is a separate iteration of that name, but it is still a name that has been around for at least those 300 years or so. But anyways, he also had a 63 bout streak of wins. That was the longest for over 150 years until Futabayama in 1938 finally broke that one, which I believe that one still stands as the longest streak ever.
I think so, because I know Hakuho got close recently, but it didn't quite break
63? I think it's up to 69 or so now.
69 sounds right.
Yeah, I think Hakuho got to like 63 before.
But I'm just pulling that out of my
Kisano
butt,
Sato took him down.
So if you're just pulling it out of your butt, maybe just not
Fine.
do that. Anyways, but yeah, so part of this streak from December of 1777 to February of 1786, so that's like 9 years, he had one loss. Jeez. That one loss was to Onogawa, the other guy who got this Yokozuna license at the same time. And he wasn't as successful as Tanakaze. He only had 7 of these unofficial titles. But he was much smaller. He was fast. He was a crowd pleaser. But yeah, again, mostly overshadowed by Tanakaze. He's the guy who broke Tanakaze's long streak. And the other fun thing I was able to find out about him is he actually studied jujutsu, like an ancient Japanese martial art, like actual martial art, because a master of jujutsu threw him twice. Well, in like a casual match, outside of a tea house. But yeah, so he was another awesome legendary guy. But the last guy I want to talk about is actually he's never been recognized as a Yokozuna.
So he would not be on the stone.
You would think so.
Oh my god!
Wait, he is.
There's plenty. There's exceptions to everything, and Raiden is one of the biggest exceptions to everything.
Pretty much the reason we're doing this podcast right now.
Indirectly, yes. I'll get to that in a second here, but he was actually discovered by Tanakaze. He was a big guy, of course. He was kind of discovered during a Jungyo, a regional tournament traveling about in 1784, and he actually ended up going to Tanakaze's Heya and studying under him. He was extremely popular. He was extremely dominant. He was featured in everything from stamps to beer labels. He's got statues. His parents have statues of them in his hometown.
Oh, wow.
That's how big of a deal he was. Supposedly, the Sumo Association even banned techniques that he liked because it was just ridiculous. He just won too much.
Like Hakuho getting the slaps and the forearms banned.
Those are effective, though.
Well, so was, I'm sure, anything that Raiden was doing. But yeah, Raiden just absolutely demolished his competition. His final official record at retirement is 254 wins and 10 losses. That still stands.
Not bad.
That still stands 96.2 as the greatest win percentage ever.
Wow.
He had a streak of 11 straight tournaments, 44 straight matches. Just absolutely unheard of. He participated in 35 basho. In 24 of those, he had 0 losses.
Jeez.
In 7 of those 24, he had no losses, no draws, no holds, nothing, just nothing but wins. So what would be called a Zensho Yusho now, an undefeated win. But of those 35, 28 of them, he won by at least one match. So I think that would probably beat out even Hakuho for best win percentage out of all the basho that he's been in.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
That was hypothetical. He's by far hilariously higher than second place in that category.
Yeah.
There was only one Rikishi who ever even beat him twice. That was Kachozan. Probably the only reason that he's in the history books is that he was the only guy to beat Raiden twice.
Hey, but what an honor.
Yeah, Raiden never lost more than twice in one basho. He retired in 1811 at 43 years old, and he was the local chairman of the Sumo Association there. He actually wrote a very famous diary of doing sumo as he traveled about Japan. But this guy is he's one of the most famous Rikishi ever, widely regarded as the greatest of all time, until, of course, Hakuho.
So I'm guessing the reason Jinmaku didn't give him the honorary Yokozuna that he gave the original three because they had more documented records and all that stuff. So he couldn't go back and say, hey, you should be Yokozuna because he was around during Yokozuna time.
Exactly.
Okay.
So because he came after Tanikaze and Onagawa, the first two who were given the official license while alive, because he came after them and didn't receive that license, we can never call him a Yokozuna.
Okay.
He never got that rank in any official capacity or unofficial, really.
Maybe he just didn't have the spirit of a Yokozuna because technically, even if you win 2 Bashos in a row, if the Yokozuna Council doesn't think you're fit to be a Yokozuna, you won't become one.
Yeah, if you're a dick about it or something.
Exactly. He could be just a huge dick.
But no, my first source when I was reading up on him was Wikipedia, and they refer to this as the unsolved riddle, like it's this massive conspiracy or something lost in the sands of time. But really, there's a couple pretty clear reasons that he wasn't given this title.
He was a dick?
Yeah. He was just a dick about it. No, the Yoshida family, they gave out these Yokozuna, the very first Yokozuna licenses to Tanikaze and Onagawa, and it's very likely they never intended to give out anymore. Because it wasn't until the next generation of the Yoshida family that there was another official Yokozuna. It was over 30 years later, and that wrestler was named Onomatsu.
Yeah, because they were originally given out for the presentation from the emperor, right? So
that's a very I think it's the most likely reason, yes, that they did that when they did that, because it was shortly after that presentation that they did, or shortly after the licenses were granted, that they had that major show for the Shogun.
Makes sense. So if there wasn't a major show, there was no big reason to do it yet.
It could be that, and it's also it could also be the fact that it just wasn't really all that big of a deal. Like they gave these guys this rope and this, they do a ceremony, la-di-da, and then it's done. But it's still, Ozeki is still the high rank at this time. Mm-hmm. So why does it matter? Why do you need a rope?
Right.
It could just be that.
That's a very good point. Didn't really matter back then.
Right. It wasn't until like I said, the next generation of the Yoshida family. So it was a completely separate head of house who gave the next license out, and it's also perhaps it was political. 30 years later, is the Gojo house who I mentioned earlier. They also gave out Yokozuna licenses, and there's this idea out there that maybe the Yoshida family, they wanted to have another Yokozuna before the Gojo family had one, because at this point. There's different leagues, essentially, you could call it. There's different people hosting tournaments. And
like back in the 50s to 60s, NFL and AFL.
Yep.
Sure. Osaka and Edo were kind of like rivals. And the Yoshida family and the Gojo family were rival houses who helped run certain aspects of sumo.
Okay.
So maybe in this 30 years later, they see Onomatsu, and they're like, okay, he's pretty awesome. And, oh, crap, the Gojos are about to get all this publicity for getting a Yokozuna, so maybe we should give a license to this guy like we did, way back when for those other two.
And this would have been after Raiden retired.
This is after Raiden retired. Yeah. So this is like in the 1820s, so more than 10 years after Raiden retired. The other thing about this is that Raiden's sponsor, or the Japanese word for this is daimyo, basically like a patron who covers his expenses, and you're my client, like the Godfather, that kind of thing for Raiden. all these wrestlers had a sponsor, a patron that would help them out. And Raiden's daimyo was actually a rival with the Yoshida family, because his daimyo and the Yoshidas were descended from two clans that fought for the shogunate. So it could just be a continuation of an old grudge that just further cemented their idea that Tanikaze and Onagawa, okay, we're done. We gave it to those guys, and now we're moving on with sumo. So I don't think it's really an unsolved riddle. I think it's just kind of the politics of the time, kind of.
And there wasn't a system set up in place for it back then.
Not yet.
I mean, there were plenty of other things that were, stereotypically rigid, about the society and the rules of sumo and the ranks and all that. But Yokozuna was not really a thing.
Yeah.
So it's good to know, like, the politics of the association running sumo was very similar to what it is now. Lots of just politicking and arguing
lot of ways
against each other.
Exactly.
Some things never change.
But the big question, though, what about the bridge? Is the bridge still standing
Yes.
today?
In GSB canon, yes, it is.
Yes, I knew it. I knew it.
The bridge that Jinmaku defended his master against during the Boshin War. But anyway, so this stone was put up in 1900, and it was added to until they ran out of space. There's actually 2 stones now, because now we're up to 73 names on those. But when Jinmaku died, 3 years after the stone was erected in 1903, he was in his mid-70s, which is actually pretty old for a Yokozuna.
Yeah, and I bet carrying that 20-ton stone took a lot of years off his life.
I'm sure his knees were just crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so there were 21 names on that stone when he died. There were 20 Yokozuna, and he decided to put one extra on there, titled The Peerless Rikishi, Raiden.
Okay.
So it's a posthumous ad.
Well,
most of them at that point seems like they were.
yeah, but I mean, like he put him on there because he felt like he needed to be on that stone. He needed to be recognized. But technically, because of the way that the politics shook out, couldn't quite call him a Yokozuna.
Right.
On every imaginable measure, though, Raiden was a Yokozuna.
Okay.
And this was actually one of the things that got our particular group started in sumo. I think we mentioned this maybe in our very first episode or something like that when we were talking about that. But the website 538 does a lot of current events and sports and things like that. They break it down with statistics. So Raiden, because he was in the Bansuke era, and we have statistics from all his matches, how many wins, losses, etc., we are able to compare him to Hakuho in the current age. So 538, this statistics website, they kind of compared them and saw how they fit together. And that's kind of where I came across sumo the first time a couple of years ago, and one of the reasons that I tried to get you guys into it, and we ended up getting stuck.
Yep.
And we're very happy you did.
Yes, I'm going to take 100% credit for that.
I honestly don't think I could deny you that.
No.
Really, there's no
No.
way I'd be into sumo if you were like, "Hey, watch these videos."
Hey guys, check this out. Okay, we'll watch it. Holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Flair? Do you have any praise for me about this?
No. No. I have weird enough taste that I might have come across the
No,
animals.
I could
No, no,
100%
no.
believe Flair could come across this on his own.
Leave your tastes to yourself.
I have no doubts that whatever the trigger event was, we would find our way here, and we would find our way to regardless, though, the end of Jinmaku's story here, he died in 1903. Like I said, there's 21 names, there's 20 Yokozuna on that stone. In part because of the way that he put this all together, and in part because of 10 years earlier when the guy wanted his title on the T-shirt sleeve. The Yokozuna rank was officially recognized in 1909. So in 1909, they finally started saying, okay, it's not just a license. Your title is Yokozuna.
Okay.
You're not an Ozeki who can wear a rope.
Did they continue to put names on the stone after Jinmaku died, or is it
Yes.
just those 20 names?
No. They continued to update that. It filled up, and now they have a second rock.
Okay.
With all current 72 Yokozuna
Plus the
one,
Peerless Rikishi.
the Peerless Rikishi Raiden.
Okay.
In 1909, that was a pretty significant year for sumo too, because that's when the first Kokugakan was built. It's since been destroyed, but then rebuilt on the same location and everything. But that was the year that it first became official central location. They also
Kind of forming sumo as we know it today.
essentially yes, because they started doing regular tournaments in Tokyo in the same spot, and they started calling it a Yusho. They started recording it as an official tournament win.
Okay.
So that was a huge reform year for sumo, and a large part of that I like to think is because of all the research that Jinmaku did to determine how important this Yokozuna license was to these early wrestlers. And the Yoshida clan, by the way, they were still there. They were kind of pissed off about that. It was 1951 when the Yokozuna Deliberation Council was able to promote their first Yokozuna without any influence or claim from the Yoshida clan that the Yoshida clan were the ones promoting. That was Chiyono Yama, the 41st Yokozuna in 1951. So the Yoshida clan, they were still
51.
around. They tried to run sumo from behind the scenes, even as it became more and more institutionalized, and all the things that they started way back in the day started becoming official procedure. So that's kind of the end of the story here. Of the first, technically only 2 Yokozuna, but the other 4 were all perfectly worthy of being on that stone.
All right.
So I think that's where we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, I think that just leaves us all with a very important question. Out of all 72 Yokozuna and one Peerless Rikishi, who could throw the most off of their bridge?
I feel like we need to do some sort of experiment on this. Yeah.
All right, but I think this is going to be like the first episode. I definitely want to get more involved talking about the history of sumo. Probably go decade by decade after this point. Jake kind of cleaned up all the Stone Age,
all
the messy stuff where it wasn't official. But now that there's official records, I think I want to try to go decade by decade.
We're out of prehistory, and now that we have written history, we can certainly look at the last 200 years in a lot more organized fashion.
Yeah,
that seems to be about the cutoff point where it becomes more written down.
Mm-hmm. But unless you guys have any other comments, I think if you like this podcast and want to give us a good rating, might as well go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating, or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts.
You can find us on Facebook at Grand Sumo Breakdown or on Twitter at GSumo Breakdown.
Flaric feels like reading our Twitter handle this time.
He's not depressed now.
Every other time. Usually I can trust people can Google stuff, but I'll help them out this time.
You go ahead and mix it up, but I got to stick to the script or I'll forget it. So you can check out our blog at grandsumobreakdown.wordpress.com for fantasy sumo and sumo power rankings.
If you have any questions, comments, or corrections, feel free to drop us a line at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com.
All right, and keep a look at your podcast inboxes. We should have another bonus episode coming out within a week or two. Till then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time, throw your salt high and keep moving forward.